Hello and welcome. In this message, I wanted to extrapolate further and then continue to showcase how the change in vibrational frequency might start to adjust or affect your perception, and in fact, maybe your interpretation of self on in this new way of being. And so, one of the nuances that I wanted to discuss is the idea or the concept of being in the world but not being of the world, and the outlook of what it means to start to see yourself as less density or as less matter or as less solidified sense of being, and start to recognize the nimbleness of yourself within the world that you are choosing to have your perception or reality be your truth. And with a choice, with each choice of being, with each choice of our experience, we will start to experience um, a perception of self, a multidimensional perception of self, that will allow us to simultaneously snap in within all the dimensional levels of interpretation and be able to have an intense experience on the 3D, if that is our choice, an intense experience on the overlook of self, of what it means for you to be a spiritual being, and then be able to interpret this energy in a three-dimensional space. And then at the same time, an overlook of self as a ray of divine, having a multidimensional, multiplane experience of you in a multitude forms and ways. And so I'm getting very vague and very esoteric with my statements here, but with just like I've discussed before, with each sets of experiences, you will be able to have a dimensional choice of interpretation of any one sets of circumstances. So, for example, if you walk into a coffee shop, right, and you place your coffee order or your tea order, and then that if that is experience that you have performed on countless and countless occasions, now within the change of the dimensional perception of you, you will be able to still, by choice, now completely by choice, to have this coffee or tea ordering experience, and the walk, the coffee shop, and the order and the payment and the pickup and the drinking be very intense and very solidified, and not in any way different from, let's say, in my experience, any other 40 years of my life. um, but from that standpoint, again, because the choice is now very apparent and is at the forefront of all being, you will be able to walk in and choose to have that same experience from the perception of your spiritual awakened being, your spiritual waveform of self, and then see the nuance almost in the most detailed way possible, in a sense that you will get to appreciate and notice every little step of an interaction, every little step of a speech or order or sip or take. You'll notice your surroundings in more detailed. Things will become more vivid, as you will start to overlook, right, the idea of your experience as opposed to sink in into the experience in a three-dimensional form. And so once you start to raise your perception, right, raise your choice and what it means for you to walk into a coffee shop and, and place an order, and have a drink, your your perceptual reality will start to expand because the amount of information that you will be able to notice while in the complete moment of presence will be much larger than kind of like scraping of the surface of what basically you were able to experience before in the very densified belief that you are a three-dimensional being in a three-dimensional coffee shop holding a three-dimensional cup, right? So the amount of information that you will be able to perceive out of that same experience now being in this perception of the outlook will be much vaster, and not only much vaster with the idea that you're noticing more details, but now the net amount of information that will come out of that noticing, that sensation, the smell, the feel, the physical response to, to walking will will be so much more vaster than it has ever been before, that it will basically by default be raised in its vibrational frequency, right? Because you're choosing to perceive this moment in a higher vibrational frequency, then your perception in that moment will carry a facilitation of a higher vibrational frequency through the nuance of more information, more input, larger scope of field of view, let's say. And then thus that within itself will raise your vibrational frequency even more. So just through the innate participation in the choice of spiritual overlook, as opposed to three-dimensional overlook, that is the opposite thereof, um, through that same choice, right, you will start to facilitate and notice yourself change at a quicker pace. You will notice perception be amplified, your senses will be amplified, your larger view of reality around you, not even your own personal reality, but the reality of others will be amplified. And so, through this, you might call this extrasensory perception or telepathy or whatever other set of amazing humanoid descriptions that you can draw into that space will simply become its natural way of being, because you're naturally, through the cyclical nature of experience to choice, larger data set of information are now raising higher and higher to be able to keep on and keep that version of self in that new plane of existence. And so there's a very convoluted way, um, but hopefully um, more clear way to explain what it means to be raising vibrational frequency and becoming multidimensional. And then on the same note, what the multidimensionality brings within that skill set, what you will be able to experience as the set of realities. Some of them you would classify it in the past as supernatural or psychic or those abilities, but none of that could be classified as such in a sense that that is um, anything but you living in a new vibrational frequency, new realm of multidimensional interpretation of your being. And so the guidance, right, the guidance that would be given is one, do not freak out about the net change, right? Do not freak out about coffee shop experience now being vastly different than it has been for the last, 2000 times you walked in and to have that same experience. And actually welcome the outlook of this new perception, right? Welcome the idea that, wow, the same experience that I have had 2000, 3000, 4000 times is now able to be set, well, literally set from a new perception, a new angle, a mirrored image of self, where now you're in an overlook perception, choosing to have this experience, and thus choosing to experience it in the most detailed and most um more real way than it has possibly ever felt before, which is difficult to say, right? That is something that from my three-dimensional standpoint, I would have said, okay, well, things will become less real as you raise up the vibrational frequency. But in fact, things become more detailed and more real because through that choice of experience, you're actually choosing to dive in into the more nuance, and then more ideas of what it means to interpret this one simple experience of a coffee shop as innate reality, right? And again, I'm using idea of a coffee shop, that is just the simplest thing that came to my mind to begin with. But you can imagine how that would extend to all experiences, and you can imagine how the data set would just become bigger and bigger. And then through that growth in the data set, you will just facilitate a larger and larger perception. And so your cognitive experience, when I would say cognitive experience, in the past you would have might have said mind, right? Your mind. But no, your cognitive experience um will expand exponentially, to where you will now start to understand and see and perceive more details and know more things ahead of time, or just know more things, period, right? As things come into your life, you will know the answer, you will know the response, you will know the circumstances. um Again, because through this data set of experience that you're pushing yourself up, you're quite literally uplifting yourself into a larger field of information or reality, right? Multidimensionality, can basically, one aspect can be looked at it that way. It's just a larger set of a dimensional reality that you can then perceive and then call it, your truth. But then your truth will almost not seem yours. It will almost seem larger than the truth because you will start to feel larger than life. You'll start feel larger than self. And that's simply the side effect of just having your cognitive experience, right? Your mind now be on a larger plane, and thus you're drawing on a much larger extrapolation of what it means to be you, right? What it means to be you in this form, or what it means to be you in that form, or what it means to be you, in the form, in any form, humanoid or not. And so, to not freak out, I say that halfway to myself. Um, and just to recognize what's happening is amazing. And then recognize that the choice obviously is always there for you to sink in and not have this overlooked perception. But maybe give it a chance, and then start to experience it and see where it will go and see how detailed and how beautiful it can get. um, and then, if once you allow that to be your truth, once you allow that to happen, um, more things will start to open, right? So again, I will repeat this, but the cycle will build upon itself, and you will just simply start to see and experience you, um, sooner or later, as the world, but then, soon after that, as the vastness of all existence. And so that is where it's going. That is where, the experience of one coffee shop, is proceeding to. Um, and again, none of that is the goal, right? The goal is not to be multidimensional and have larger data sets or have larger minds or have larger cognitive experiences. So none of this is something that, from a three-dimensional space, you would look at anything other than a renewed experience of self, that you can run with and you can take and you can actualize, and then almost like feel a beauty, in the idea that, there's new potential, right? There's like new expressions of you, at the same time, most beautiful way, you still being, the same old you, um, which is a great gift to have, right? To be able to experience a new you while you're still choosing to be in this body. And I think I'll extrapolate on that. But that is quite literally, the incarnation of our being in this time and space. is living in that choice and what it feels like to have that choice, possibly for the first time. Good luck experiencing it with coffee shops. Have a good one.